Hello and welcome back to the GTM Playroom. My name is Ben and I'll be your host for today. Today I'm joined by Steve Smith, the CEO of Tollanis Solutions. Steve has spent over 30 years at the intersection of enterprise technology leadership and operational scale, building a strategic consultancy that doesn't just manage IT infrastructure, they orchestrate high-velocity growth engines for brands such as Carnival Cruise Line, Zendesk, and IHG. Steve, welcome to the show.
Appreciate it, and pleasure to be here.
Yeah. I wanted to dive straight in. You guys operate at this quite interesting crossroads between traditional enterprise IT and modern kind of AI-driven GTM workflows. What was your motivation for starting Tollanis, and what was that original kind of go-to-market motion that got you to your first million in revenue?
Yeah, so I think my story. As you indicated up front. I've got 30 plus years. I'm an old guy. I've been doing this since there was no internet, and for many years I worked initially in the military within the technology sector. So did a lot of signals work. Worked within military intelligence groups. Worked with a lot cross border work. Satellite imagery, SIGINT collection. So that's really where I cut my teeth on technology. Went out into the private sector, went to work for a couple large multinationals, including IBM. But I eventually got to the point where my career of, consulting and working with corporations, I got to see a lot of both sides of the equation, both the procurement as well as the supplier side of technology. Eventually worked myself into the CIO and CTO desk. So I was chief information officer for orbitz.com. I was CIO for autotrader.com. So, some really big, iconic internet brands. And as I sat there and looked at that, I said, there really needs to be someone who's a truth sayer in all of this, because I could talk to 4 different companies and get 4 different prices for the exact same kind of service or the exact same kind of technology. And so I said, I want to get out there and do it myself. So in 2009, started my own company. And the thing that really kind of was that motion that, kind of got us to our first $1 million was the relationships that I built. At the end of the day, I like to believe that everything in life is about relationship. Those relationships that you build, you can change companies, you can change technology, you can move different places around the globe. But the 2 things that you carry with you are the relationships that you built over the years and the knowledge and experience that you gained during that process of building those relationships. So, that threshold of being able to go out and get our initial business, build that book, was really based upon those relationships. It is, a truism. The best way to grow your business is through word of mouth. If you know somebody who speaks highly of you, they have that trusted relationship, they're going to recommend you, and someone's going to give you that opportunity, and the door is going to open based upon that relationship. So that's really, in my world, a pretty simple philosophy of, build the relationship, say what you mean what you say, and that's going to help you grow and get to the next level.
No, it's fascinating, Steve, and I love that you're saying that in a world where we're living through an AI revolution, and there's always this detachment between the human and the AI, and it's great that we're kind of focusing more and more on those human relationships, and we're seeing it across our client port as well. In terms of things that you knew, what was the kind of unfair advantage that you knew that kind of shaped how you sell today? Was it that accumulation of relationships that you had built throughout your career?
I would tell you that the unfair advantage that I think that I have, and it's a gift from, genetics or from the Almighty, wherever you want to draw it from. But it's about communication. It's the ability to communicate and build those skill sets. And I saw an interesting study here a few years ago, and it came out of Harvard, and they were talking about technicians and engineers, their value in the marketplace and their earning potential. And they compared them against liberal arts majors. English, philosophy, history, and there's a very distinct disadvantage that those liberal arts majors have when entering the workforce. Engineers make a lot more money coming straight out of university. But when you go over the course of 10, 20, 30 years, the liberal arts majors actually end up making more money than an engineer. The reason being is they can communicate. They have a far easier time of building relationships, communicating ideas and concepts. And so I think the unfair advantage that I had is one that a lot of people have, which is the ability to communicate, to carry ideas forward to other people. And, I really truly believe that the most important job in the history of mankind is a salesperson. And the
Mm,
reason being is I don't care about what human endeavor we've undertaken as a species, whether it's building the pyramids, building the Panama Canal, conquering another country. Somebody had to sell that idea to a person or a group of persons to enact it. So the most important job from my perspective is that of a salesperson, because every idea, concept, and endeavor must be sold and people must be convinced that it's the right thing to go do.
mm. Spot on, Steve. Going back to the fundamentals and the basics of first principles thinking, which have predated our time on this planet. In terms of this focus that you have on relationships and being a salesman first approach, how has that led to the evolution of your offer over the since 2009 when you originally started?
So, the company, if you go to our website, you'll see it. We try to put an emphasis on the human component. And you kind of mentioned that earlier in your other comment. The technology is the technology. But at the
Mm,
end of the day, that technology is built for only a few things. It either helps you make money, helps you save money, or helps you be compliant with some kind of regulatory or
mm,
governmental process. Those three things all involve human. If you can't get your end users to adopt a piece of technology, if you can't get your customers to embrace a platform or a tool, you can't get your processes worked through because a person can't figure it out, the tool is worthless. Even if I look at, the beauty and amazement of, AI today that we have with all the various large language models, um, they're useless without the human component. And they're worthless without some bank or database of knowledge that they can draw from, which comes from the end user, the human in the equation. So, I think that, if you look at it, it's really all about the person. It's all about the human. It's about the individual. And again,
mm.
everything has to connect back to why are we doing this? What is going to help it drive forward? And there's always going to be a person sitting at the end or the beginning of that process.
Mm. And in terms of where you are today, you've obviously built a business real strength in contact centers and credentialing, for example. What does your go-to-market motion look like today? Is it still based off of word of mouth, or have you expanded beyond other kind of channels?
Yeah, it's always going to be a component, but once you get to a certain size and scale, that word of mouth isn't going to get you to the next level. It's just not going to. You build that as part of your culture and your DNA as a company, as an organization. You infuse it into your team, but to really kind of get to the next level, you've got to use, it's go to marketing trench warfare. You've got to get out there and do the hard work, use the tools. I will tell you that, I think that the arrival of AI has enabled marketing and marketing activities at a scale that I unfortunately think is actually having a counterintuitive impact. I think it's now starting to become numb because you can do it at such scale. I mean, I can set up outbound SMS and robocalls and outreach, and AI can do it, 100,000 times a day. And all you're doing is flooding the market, flooding the channel. I'm sitting in my CEO seat. I get at least, 20 to 50 emails a day of people trying to solicit my attention, get me to buy something, listen to something. I mean, it's just a torrent. And I had the same thing, 10 years ago when I got into the C-level suite. It's just overwhelming, I think, for most of us, that it just becomes numbing in its effect. So I think, we're going to have to figure out how to get back to some of that relationship-based component and tie it with very targeted and, a lot of
Mm.
specificity in those marketing, approaches.
I think you're spot on, Steve. In a world where the gap between strategy, ideation, and execution has narrowed to such an extent where if you have an idea, say, I want to target, X person in X industry, you can do it very quickly at the snap of your fingers. That's not where the moat is. The moat is, right, how do you create a compelling buyer experience which feels human? So what have you tried, given this at Tollanis, what have you tried to do to kind of leverage AI tools, but also retain that human experience? What have you done there?
Yeah, so I think, as we go through and build our ICPs and we, do that, kind of traditional work of, finding and identifying potential opportunities or targets based upon those ICPs. I think we try to, again, weave into that a slice of humanity. And when I say that, it's us doing the hard work of, making personal contacts, making personal relationships, um, finding those tangential points. The challenge, I think, becomes is some of that also comes across as disingenuous. I'll give you a great example. I went to Syracuse University for one of my undergrad degrees. um, I'll get, someone that, scanned my LinkedIn profile, saw
Mm,
the universities I went to, and then, does an AI search about the local pubs and bars and pizza shops around campus where I went and said, oh, you remember those days back at, Billy's Pizza Hut, where we used to, sit down and get beers, all those days were great. I'm like, you've probably never been to Syracuse University in your life, dude. It's so it rings disingenuine that someone's trying to make
mm,
that artificial connection. I get what they're trying to do. I
mm,
understand kind of the approach, but there has to be, sincerity and authenticity in those messages and those connections. So, a lot of what we do is, just trying to do a lift around authenticity, genuineness in those outreaches and those communications.
mm. And can you be a bit more specific? What does that look like for you? How are you being much more authentic in your communications, in your sales process, and things like that?
Yeah, I think it's, we're not, and I think, sales takes on somewhat of a dirty word sometimes.
Mm. Or partnerships, if you'd like to.
Yeah, I mean, but here's the thing. At the end of the day, and that was the reason I got into this business, started my own company. I was tired of being sold. I wanted someone who's going to come in and be a truth teller. So, our approach is, I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm here to help. Okay. And if that solution is somebody else's solution or a different company, great. I helped you solve a problem. When there is a specific problem that you can have that I can help you solve with, I'm hoping that you'll remember that I helped you and you'll reach out to us. I'm not going to be able, no company, I don't care whether it's IBM or Tata or pick any global company, nobody has all the capabilities in their toolkit. They're going to have to work with other people. It's no different for us at our scale and size. So, if I can build a partnership and a relationship with people that says, come to me, I'll be a great sounding board. I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm going to tell you what it costs, how long it's going to take to build it, how long it's going to do it, and whether we're the right people to help you do it. That's going to build that authenticity. I'm not there to sell you something. I'm there to help you, again, achieve one of those objectives: make money, save money, or make sure you're in compliance.
Mm. Yeah, very interesting. And I think here we're talking a lot about like the sales process and how you're kind of approaching the sales conversation. When you think about like kind of the go-to-market and your targeting, how are you kind of integrating that authenticity in your kind of outreach efforts currently?
Yeah, and I think that's the hardest part because you can't automate that. It's
Mm,
you've got to build that one-to-one bridge. Um, so we take a lot of opportunities. So I try to get out. Great example here, talking to you. Find avenues to connect with people. Put out the media, put out opportunities to go speak, talk. The more conversations that you can get started, and the more vectors you can use for those conversations, the more opportunity you have to connect with somebody. I mean, it's why social media goes viral, because there's something visceral and emotional that connects with somebody. I will tell you, when I go speak at forums, Chamber of Commerce's, you know, social events, business forum, you find those venues and just go talk. And I will
Mm,
tell you, I was just at one a couple weeks ago where I spoke at a Chamber of Commerce here in Florida. I had 10 people waiting in line to have a conversation with me after that conversation. Um, and now three of them have turned into, opportunities for us to potentially partner with those folks. Uh, you've just got to find those vectors that you can leverage to start the communication and demonstrate that you do have that authenticity and the willingness not just to sell them a piece of technology or a service, but to help them be successful in whatever their industry is.
interesting. So, in practical terms, what does your kind of go-to-market look like at the moment? Are you just you as an individual going to all these conferences, putting your name out there, and then hoping people come in and express interest in the conversation and potentially partnering?
Oh no, no. Again, I don't think you can't just abandon. I mean, a lot of folks do. I mean, I'll give you another example. Is we're talking to we're still in acquisition mode. We're looking at a couple companies right now that are in our pipeline. One is a fairly sizable technology group in the dental practice space in North America, and they have zero marketing, zero. They have no sales team. Uh, they've grown their book of business to $7 million over the course of 20 years. Long time to get there, but it's all been organic. And it was founded by a tech guy and a dentist. And the dentist used his relationships and grew it through that avenue. Um, so there's a lot of companies that are doing that, just kind of plugging away, and it's who I know, and you come see me. But I don't think you're going to get to where you want to get to from a growth perspective and a numbers perspective. You rely strictly on that. You've got to do the traditional marketing in conjunction with a philosophy and a
Mm,
culture that is built around people and relationships. So I don't think there's any one silver bullet that's going to help you get where you need to go. I think it's a combination of,
mm,
traditional marketing, traditional social media, now, getting around, AEO and, GEO and, a lot of the new channels, making sure that your site and your products are all enabled for those kinds of technologies, building relationship opportunities. So sending your salespeople out, having them build relationships, having them go to events, having them make connections, having a traditional SDR BDR process where you're trolling and you're pushing and you're building your ICPs and you're looking for those opportunities. You put all that together, you're going to get a pretty comprehensive program that's going to help move your business forward.
mm.
But I don't think there's any one that's going to help you achieve what you're looking for without having a more comprehensive approach.
Interesting. And so, can you peel back the curtain and share a bit more about what your approach looks like? Do you have an SDR, BDR setup as well? Do you have salespeople? Like, walk us through what that looks
Oh
like.
yeah, yeah. So we have a traditional marketing team. So we've got graphic designers and we've got social media people and we've got an SDR BDR team. We've got our salespeople are client success managers, so they're not really salespeople. I mean, obviously they have a traditional commission structure where they're rewarded for bringing in new opportunities. They're rewarded for growing their current book of business and doing add-ons and bolt-ons. So we have all those traditional features. But I don't think you can avoid that. We've now bolted on AI. So it's a hybrid environment where we've got automation and automated agents doing work as well. So it's again, there is no one comprehensive tool set. I think it's a combination of putting modern tool sets along with traditional tool sets, and then figuring out what the right balance is to make sure that you're investing in each of those platforms, vectors, and
Mm,
channels in a way that you get the best return on investment.
interesting. And looking at your current motion, where do you see the biggest challenges in what you've got already? Where are the biggest kind of problems that you're dealing with at the moment?
Yeah, I think again, I'll go back to what I mentioned earlier is that I think that it's flooding the channel. I, how do you separate yourself from all noise? When your typical IT leader in any organization of any size is just getting a flood of marketing from different vectors. Um, how do you help stand out from the crowd? And that's just, I think, getting the right message, the um, right kind of communication, so
Mm,
that you stand out a little bit. But I just think it's tough. It's just there's so much now because we can do it at such scale with these tools that everyone's out there trying to grow their business. And I think it's challenging because I think we're going to be in a world that is shifting. If you look at, and this is just a demographic thing. This is, I've written a couple books, and one of the big books I wrote, I talked about this very specifically. We're living in a world now where population is going to start decreasing. So
mm,
you look at, the Western nations. Europe is a great example. In 300 years, there will be no native Germans left. The countries are shrinking. The Scandinavian countries are shrinking. They're just not replacing each other. So even if you go to high growth populations there, Africa, India, they aren't anymore. They're not producing the same amount of birth rate that they have historically. So the corollary of that is the world that we've all kind of been programmed that, I did $5 this year, I'm going to do $7 next year, I'm going to do $10 the year after. There aren't ever expanding markets. As the entire globe starts reaching a level of, equilibrium on, you know, income and lifestyle, and population drops, it's going to be really hard for companies just to see year over year growth, because there just isn't an ever expanding population that's demanding needing services. So the question really becomes is how do we change our thinking? How do we grow our business in a way that allows us to remain profitable, sustainable in a world where demographics and technology is actually shrinking? So shrinking that pool of opportunity and shrinking the work that traditionally humans have done. A lot of that stuff is just going to go away.
mm. So on that, obviously, a very kind of macro theme here around
Yeah.
global population decline, and I saw an interesting article around the Chinese government putting levies on contraceptives to kind of encourage people
Sure.
to procreate. What is your philosophy as a business as to how you're going to kind of navigate and overcome that challenge?
I think it goes back to the grind. You know, it's about just grinding it out. Um, Listen, we're not all going to be on a hockey stick. That's not available for everyone business. And when you see these valuations, and someone started a company 6 months ago and they're worth $1 billion, that's winning the lottery. The rest of us have to just kind of grind it out. We have to outwork, out hustle, outperform, out deliver our competitors so we win that opportunity, and then hope that somebody else isn't working as hard and grinding as hard as we are. Uh, it just, I think it's just a truism that you're going to get out of the system and out of your effort what you put into it, and at some point it does start clicking and moving forward. So that's kind of where I'm at, is just roll up your sleeves and prove that you're going to deliver a better service, a better piece of technology, at a better price.
Keen to kind of peel back the curtain and understand a bit more about what you're kind of finding difficult with your current sales and marketing motion. You've obviously got kind of BDRs, you've got traditional marketing with SEO and SEO. Where is like the challenge for you at the moment with your current motion?
Yeah, I think the challenge we have with our current motion is really getting those opportunities to engage. Like I said,
Mm.
I think that the channel is flooded.
But when you
The
say
same thing.
opportunities to engage, you mean like getting interactions from your leads, replies from your
Yeah,
leads?
interactions to actually have a conversation, where
Okay.
someone actually wants to sit down, talk about a challenge or a problem that they're having.
Yeah.
And I think that, I don't think it's just a problem that we're having. I think it's a problem in general technology. It's one thing if someone's reaching out to you to get information. It's another if you're trying to hit them at that time they're looking, or when they have a problem, or when they're open to having a discussion. It's great if someone reaches out to you, and you got to make sure that you're there so that they can find you. When they do have a problem, you're on the radar screen and you're showing up in whatever search mechanism they're looking for. It's also trying to figure out how to get people engaged, have a conversation, a dialogue that's meaningful for both you and for them.
Interesting. And in terms of as a business, do you have any kind of do you mind sharing kind of what your revenue is and what your kind of targets are for the rest of the year?
Sure. So we're currently at about 11.5 million. We've got a global footprint. So we've got an office in the Philippines. We've got one in India. We have our North American footprint here in Florida, in the U.S. We've got about 230 folks on the team, and we're at that point now where we're pushing. Our objective is to get to 100 million bucks. That's kind of where we're at, and that's going to be a combination of organic acquisitions and partnership, to help us get there. We're kind of at that inflection point now as well, where we're looking at Series A. And what does that additional influx of capital get us, and where does it take us? How do we deploy that capital in a way that really is effective to help us get to that next level?
So 11.5 million, you wanted 10x growth. Do you have a timeline for when you're trying to do that?
So, right now we're trying to draw that plan up, because again, it does involve an influx of capital as well. I'd like to target a 5-year plan to get to that number. I think that's realistic with the right strategy, the right structure, the right leadership team. Because the other part about this equation is making sure that you have the right players on the bus. I'll go back to Larry Ellison of Oracle. The team that got him to $100 million wasn't the team that got him to $1 billion. And it wasn't that they weren't great, and it wasn't that they didn't, love the company and contribute and help him get to a certain point. As a company evolves, the complexion of leadership team needs to evolve as well, that you bring different skill sets, knowledge, and experience to the table. They're going to help you get to that next plateau.
Yeah, interesting. So for your, bring it back to kind of go to market, for your, to get to 20 million, for example, what do you see as the kind of biggest hurdles and obstacles from a go to market perspective?
Yeah, I just think it's volume of opportunities. Just getting, because here's the thing: is we should be closing, somewhere 20 to 30% of everything that comes in the door. You got to get it in the door. You've got to qualify it. You got to make sure that there's a real opportunity there and there's a conversation to be had. So I think it's in part it's a volume game, but it's a volume game on both sides of the equation. So the customer's getting flooded, but we also need to get lots of numbers to make sure that we get the when it starts going down through that filter and funnel, you get the stuff that you can close and actually bring home and build a long-term partnership with whoever that prospect is.
Yeah. And on the volume of opportunities piece, why don't you think you're getting there? Because you're obviously a very AI native organization. You talk a lot about the relationship and the people focused piece. Why can't you reach that? And what have you tried to get there?
Yeah, I think that's the big elephant in the room. What are we not doing? What are we doing? And are we not grinding in the right areas? And another example I'd love to go back to is you look at Amazon. For the first 10 years, Amazon struggled. They didn't make any money. They were unprofitable, and they just grind. And then all of a sudden, finally everything kind of comes together and you start seeing the ignition. I think we're at that point where we just need to keep the grind going, making sure that we're doing the right things, making the right decisions, getting the right team, getting the right tools, getting the right partners. It'll come together. I don't think there's anything that I would say, oh my God, we're not doing this, or this is the reason we're not seeing that, that funnel, flush out with more opportunities. I think we're still tweaking, kind of the partnerships, the relationships, the tool sets, the team members, the approach, the playbooks that we're building. I think we still need to continue to tweak those and just keep grinding at it. I don't think there's any magic silver bullet. Anyone that promises you that there's a silver bullet in the world of marketing is lying to you. There just isn't.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's constant iteration, constant strategy, and we've seen it with our clients. Like we'll get a client come on and we'll try one play, and then we'll have to try 6 or 7 different plays before you actually find a
Yeah,
successful one. So it's that constant iteration piece there. And the beauty about today is that, as I said before, the gap between strategy and execution is so small. You can have a go-to-market idea and then execute it very quickly. How are you kind of rapidly iterating and rapidly testing new things
yeah. I
to
think
kind of
we're A/B
capture?
testing all the time. To your point, it's constantly, you know, reiterating.
Mm,
Trying, all avenues to see which one works. And even though something works, and it might get some traction, and you're seeing that motion actually play out. It may last 6 months, it may last 90 days, and then you've got to switch gears and look at a different avenue. So I think it's just it's like saying, you never step in the same river twice. It's constantly flowing, constantly moving, and you've got to keep adjusting target to make sure that you're moving ahead of it and getting the most volume value out of what you're doing.
interesting. Really, really, really interesting. And I suppose you could obviously try everything and change everything at once. Are there any specific areas that you're focused on? I know when I was speaking with Frank, who heads up your kind of sales and marketing, who said that growth was good, but reach was perhaps a bit of an issue. So are you perhaps focused on getting your name out there, doing a bit more visibility, or what does that look like?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. So when I talk about getting opportunities to have meaningful conversations, the more we get our name out there and the more people hear of us, outside of channels where people are trying to market to us, um, getting our platform so that it's positioning on the internet, it's getting it forums and groups, it's getting the backlink. Again, it's the grind. It's doing all that stuff to make sure that you have visibility and relevance to your brand and your name, and then getting those opportunities for conversation.
Yeah, fantastic, fantastic. Really, really, really interesting. And in the world of AI, if AI could fix one thing within your business, what would be the first thing that it could unlock, to help you get to that next revenue milestone?
Yeah, I think that the thing about AI that I think is going to help be transformative for us and for a lot of places is that um, AI can help us extend the workbench. If I can get it to take, the work of one salesperson or one BDR, turn it into the work of 5 or 10, that's going to be the value. I don't think the human goes away. I think there's this symbiotic relationship between uh, AI and the automation and the human. You create that hybrid. I mean, we're doing it today in our contact center operations. There's a ton of stuff that AI can do exceptionally well. There's a ton of stuff it cannot do exceptionally well. It is not a silver bullet. But if we can, mature to the point where it can help be a force multiplier, then I think we've achieved success.
Mm. And practically, what does that look like? What kind of operational, mundane tasks of your salespeople have you eliminated through AI?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the easy stuff right now is question and answer, booking, scheduling. It's kind of the manual stuff. I think it's the initial engagement and then the orchestration is the piece where AI right now is helping us. Again, I'd like to see it take on a larger role where it actually is helping us you know build that bridge and then work hand in hand with that human to help get that opportunity mature and that relationship built.
Brilliant, brilliant. And appreciate your time here. And in terms of, you're obviously selling AI-enabled transformation to clients. This is, cool to what you do as a business. What are the primary ways that you're kind of leveraging AI within your sales and marketing functions? And what would you say is the gap between what you've operationalized for your clients and what you've kind of implemented within your business, if there is any?
I think that the beauty of AI, and I'll give you a great example. We're working on a fairly sizable opportunity, and I can go into AI and I can do in 5 minutes create a playbook. I can put together a pricing matrix. I can do an analysis on all the documents of the RFP. I can pull all of our service components from our current repository. AI can do that stuff like that. I remember in the old days, if I was going to do a proposal for a company, there were even if you use a tool like Proposify, it still takes time. AI can take that leverage. If I've come up with what the solution is, I know what our portfolio and our playbooks are, mash that up. AI can create a response to an RFP in 5 minutes. I can take all of our pricing and our structures. I can pull it into AI, and it can tell me, here's what the market, go to market pricing is for this particular service offering. Here's the low end. Here's the high end. Here's kind of what middle market is. We can go in and validate all that stuff and put together that price book in 5 minutes. It is a incredibly powerful tool that multiplies our ability to go and deliver. I think the same thing holds true for our customers that are using it that way. That there are some things that can help you move very, very quickly and take time and workload off of salespeople, engineers, pre-sales folks, so that they can put something that's a near polished proposal or a near polished product that they can then finalize, because it still requires the human, because AI hallucinates, it produces, I mean, it's designed to produce results. Whether those results are true or not doesn't really factor into it when it tries to satisfy our ask.
I see. I see. Well, Steve, thank you very much for your time. It's been a fantastic interview. Last question before we kind of wrap up today. Many of our listeners are, CEOs, they heads of growth, heads of marketing at companies of a similar size to you, kind of late 7-fig, early 8 figs. What's the kind of best advice you would give to them about kind of scaling beyond that word of mouth piece, and any lessons that you've taken, which you would mind sharing with our audience?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back to what I talked about earlier before we had some of our technical issues. But again, I think it's about the grind. You gotta put your shoulder in and work. And when you do that, sometimes you strike gold as well. Sometimes you'll put the grind in, and you'll run into an opportunity that transforms your business, your company, and your top and bottom lines. So I think you just got to keep the wheel, moving, and keep your shoulder to it, and eventually it's going to turn your way if you just kind of put in that effort.
Fantastic. So just about more grind and also focusing on the human as well.
That's it. That's it. Work hard and keep the human and the relationships all in focus.
Work hard and keep the relationships alive. Steve, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right. Appreciate it, Ben. Thank you.
Cheers, Steve. Cheers.